What if the moment your own pack rejected you, traded you like property because of the color of your skin, was actually the universe pushing you toward a destiny so powerful that kingdoms would tremble and an alpha king would defy centuries of tradition just to claim you as his? She was born with dark skin in a world that worshipped pale wolves, cast aside by her own family, sold to the cruelest pack in the Northern Territories like livestock, and left to die in shame and isolation, until the night the most feared alpha in all the realms laid eyes on her and everything changed. This is the story of Zara Blackthorn, a girl who was told her entire life that she was worth nothing, that her melanin-rich skin made her unworthy of love, unworthy of a mate, unworthy of belonging, and how she rose from the ashes of rejection to become the most powerful Luna the werewolf world had ever seen. Her journey will break your heart, ignite your rage, and ultimately restore your faith that sometimes the people who reject you are simply clearing the path for those destined to choose you. This is not just a love story. This is a tale of reclaiming power, defying prejudice, and discovering that your worth was never determined by those too blind to see your value. So before we begin, let me ask you this: have you ever been made to feel like you don't belong because of something you cannot change about yourself? Drop a comment below, because Zara's story is for every person who has ever been told they are too much or not enough, and by the end of this tale, you will understand that rejection is often redirection in disguise. Zara Blackthorn was born under a blood moon in the Shadowpine Pack, a mid-tier clan nestled in the forests of the Eastern Highlands. The moment she entered the world, the midwives gasped. Her skin was a rich, deep brown, her hair thick black coils that defied the straight, pale aesthetic valued by werewolf society. In a world where lightness was associated with purity, power, and desirability, Zara's darkness was seen as a curse. Her mother, Elena, wept when she saw her daughter, not because she didn't love her, but because she knew what this meant. Zara's father, the Beta of Shadowpine, refused to even look at the child. He had expected a pale-skinned daughter who could be married off to strengthen alliances. Instead, he got what he called an abomination. From the moment Zara could understand language, she was told she was less than. The other wolf pups refused to play with her. The elders whispered that her coloring was a sign of weak bloodlines, of impurity, of something fundamentally wrong. Zara's own family treated her like a shameful secret, keeping her hidden during pack gatherings, forbidding her from shifting in public, and reminding her constantly that she was lucky they hadn't abandoned her in the woods as a newborn. Zara grew up lonely, isolated, and convinced that she was unworthy of love. She spent her childhood watching other girls be celebrated, chosen, and cherished while she remained invisible. The only person who showed her any kindness was an elderly Omega named Maris, a woman who had also been ostracized for being different. Maris taught Zara to read, to fight, and to survive. She told her stories of ancient wolves who were said to have skin like night and eyes like stars, wolves who were worshipped as divine. But those stories felt like myths, distant and impossible. Zara's reality was harsh and unforgiving. Zara's childhood was marked by small cruelties that accumulated into deep wounds. On her 8th birthday, her mother baked a cake in secret and brought it to her room, a rare gesture of affection. But when Zara's father discovered it, he smashed the cake against the wall and screamed at Elena for wasting resources on a child who would never amount to anything. Zara learned that day to stop hoping for love from her family. She learned to make herself small, to stay quiet, to disappear. At school, the other children mocked her relentlessly. They called her shadow, coal, dirt, and worse. They said her wolf must be as ugly as she was, that no one would ever choose her as a mate, that she was cursed. Zara's wolf, when she finally shifted at age 12, was breathtaking. Her fur was midnight black with silver streaks that shimmered like starlight. She was fast, agile, and stronger than anyone expected. But even that couldn't change how she was treated. If anything, it made things worse. The other wolves feared what they didn't understand, and Zara's unique beauty in wolf form was just another reason to ostracize her. By the time she was a teenager, Zara had learned to survive on scraps of validation. Maris became her lifeline, the only person who saw her as more than her appearance. The old woman told her stories of the ancient packs, of a time before prejudice, when wolves of all colors lived in harmony. She spoke of the moon goddess, the divine being who created all wolves and loved each one equally. Maris would hold Zara's face in her weathered hands and say, "The goddess does not make mistakes, child. You were created with intention. Your darkness is not a flaw. It is your strength." But those words felt hollow when the rest of the world treated her like garbage. When Zara turned 16, her father began to panic. Most daughters her age were already being courted, already forming bonds that would lead to advantageous matings. But no one wanted Zara. No male from Shadowpine or any neighboring pack showed even the slightest interest. Her father saw her as a burden, a stain on the family name, a problem that needed to be solved. He tried to marry her off to increasingly desperate suitors, offering dowries, land, anything to get rid of her. But every potential match took one look at Zara and declined. One young alpha from a nearby pack actually laughed in her father's face and said, "I'd rather mate with a rogue than that thing." Zara overheard the conversation from the hallway. She didn't cry. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing. She simply walked back to her room, closed the door, and stared at herself in the mirror. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel rage. Not sadness. Not shame. Rage. Why was she being punished for something she had no control over? Why was her worth determined by the color of her skin instead of the content of her character? Why did a world that claimed to worship the moon goddess reject one of her creations so completely? That night, Zara made a decision. She would stop trying to earn love from people who would never give it. She would stop shrinking to make others comfortable. She would survive, and someday, somehow, she would escape Shadowpine and build a life where she didn't have to apologize for existing. But fate had other plans, and they were far more painful than anything Zara could have imagined. When Zara turned 18, the age when most wolves find their mates through the bond, her father made a decision that would shatter what little hope she had left. The alpha of the Ironclaw pack, a brutal and ruthless leader named Victor, had reached out to Shadowpine with an offer. He needed laborers, servants, and disposable wolves to work the dangerous mines on the edge of his territory. In exchange, he would provide Shadowpine with weapons, resources, and protection from rival packs. It was a lucrative deal, but it required bodies. Wolves willing to do the work no one else wanted. Wolves whose disappearance wouldn't be mourned. Zara's father saw an opportunity to rid himself of his greatest embarrassment and gain favor with a powerful ally. He offered Zara as part of the trade. No ceremony. No farewell. No pretense of regret. Just a signed contract and a command to leave. Zara was given 1 hour to pack her belongings and say goodbye to the only home she had ever known. She stood in her small room, staring at the few possessions she had, a worn blanket, a book Maris had given her, a wooden carving of a wolf she had made herself. Everything she owned fit into a single bag. Everything she was leaving behind fit into even less. Her mother came to her room, tears streaming down her face, but she said nothing. She simply pressed a small pouch of coins into Zara's hand and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Zara wanted to scream at her. Wanted to ask why she never stood up for her, why she let this happen, why she chose a cruel husband over her own daughter. But there was no point. Elara was as much a victim of this world as Zara was, just in a different way. So Zara took the coins, nodded, and walked away without looking back. Maris was waiting for her at the edge of the village. The old woman's face was lined with grief, but her eyes were fierce. She pulled Zara into a tight embrace and held her for a long moment. "Listen to me, child," Maris said, her voice trembling but firm. "This is not the end of your story. This feels like death, but it is a doorway. You are going to suffer. You are going to question everything. But you will survive. And when you do, you will rise so high that everyone who rejected you will be forced to look up just to see where you've gone. Maris pressed a small pendant into Zara's palm. It was a moonstone, polished smooth and strung on a silver chain. This belonged to my grandmother, Maris said. She was like you. Dark-skinned. Powerful. Unwanted by fools. She wore this her entire life, and it protected her. Wear it and remember that the moon goddess sees you, even when others refuse to. Zara clutched the pendant, her throat tight with emotion. She wanted to thank Maris, to tell her how much she meant, to promise they would see each other again. But the words wouldn't come. So she simply nodded, put the pendant around her neck, and climbed onto the cart that would take her away from everything she had ever known. She was joined by 3 other wolves who had been traded. A scarred male who had lost his arm in battle. A young woman who had been caught stealing food. An elderly wolf who was too weak to work anymore. All of them rejects. All of them disposable. They didn't speak during the journey. There was nothing to say. They traveled for days through harsh terrain, treated like cargo, fed scraps, and forbidden from complaining. The guards who escorted them made it clear that they were property now, not pack members. When one of the wolves asked for water, he was beaten. When the young woman tried to escape, she was dragged back and shackled. Zara learned quickly to keep her head down and endure. When they finally arrived at Ironclaw territory, Zara's heart sank. The packlands were cold, industrial, and oppressive. The landscape was dominated by massive mining operations, with wolves working in brutal conditions under the watchful eyes of cruel overseers. Smoke billowed from forges. The air smelled of sulfur and sweat. Everything about this place was designed to break spirits and extract labor. The wolves who greeted the new arrivals looked at them with a mixture of pity and contempt. One of the guards, a massive brute with a scarred face, grabbed Zara by the arm and yanked her forward. "This one's dark," he sneered. "Never seen one like this before. Think she'll last a week in the mines?" Another guard laughed. "Doubt it. Look at her. Scrawny. Weak. She'll probably collapse on the first day." Zara bit her tongue to keep from responding. Defiance would only make things worse. She allowed herself to be led away, processed like livestock, and assigned to the lowest rank in the pack hierarchy. Omega laborer. Her job was to haul rocks, sort ore, and clean the filth no one else would touch. The work was backbreaking. The conditions were inhumane. The abuse was constant. Zara was beaten for being too slow, starved for speaking out of turn, and mocked relentlessly for her appearance. The other laborers, broken and bitter themselves, found solace in having someone lower than them to torment. Zara became the target for every cruelty, every frustration, every ounce of rage that the oppressed turned on each other instead of their oppressors. She had gone from being invisible to being a target. And somehow, that was even worse. Months passed in a haze of pain and exhaustion. Zara woke before dawn, worked until her hands bled, ate whatever scraps she was given, and collapsed into a restless sleep on a thin mat in a crowded barracks. She stopped dreaming. She stopped hoping. She simply survived, one day at a time, waiting for death to claim her because it felt like the only escape. The only thing that kept her tethered to life was the moonstone pendant. Every night, before she fell asleep, she would clutch it and whisper a prayer to the moon goddess. "I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if you care. But if you do, please. Just let me survive this. Just let me live long enough to see something better." She never expected an answer. But fate, it seemed, had been listening all along. The turning point came on the night of the Summit of Alphas, a gathering that happened once every decade where the most powerful pack leaders from across the realm convened to discuss treaties, alliances, and territorial disputes. Ironclaw, as one of the larger packs, was hosting the event, and Victor spared no expense in showing off his wealth and power. The great hall was decorated with banners, the tables were laden with food, and the air buzzed with the energy of dominant wolves asserting their authority. Zara was assigned to serve during the event, a humiliating role that required her to carry trays of food and drink to the gathered alphas while remaining invisible and silent. She kept her head down, moving through the hall like a shadow, hoping to avoid notice. The last thing she wanted was to draw the attention of any of these powerful, dangerous men. But the moment Alpha King Kale Nightshade walked into the room, everything changed. Kale Nightshade was a legend. He was the ruler of the Crimson Moon Dynasty, the largest and most feared pack in existence. Stories about him were told in hushed whispers. He was said to be the strongest alpha in 1,000 years, a warrior who had never lost a battle, a leader who commanded absolute loyalty from thousands of wolves. He was also devastatingly handsome, though few dared to say so to his face. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver eyes that seemed to pierce through lies and weakness, Kale radiated dominance and danger. He had ruled for over 2 decades and had never taken a mate, despite being well past the age when most alphas bonded. Rumors swirled about why. Some said he was cursed, unable to feel the mate bond. Others believed he was waiting for a mate powerful enough to stand beside him. The truth, known only to Kale himself, was that he had simply never felt the pull. He had met thousands of she-wolves over the years, many of them stunning, capable, and eager to become his Luna. But none of them had sparked the primal, undeniable connection that signaled a true mate bond. Kale had begun to believe he would rule alone forever. He had made peace with it. He didn't need a mate to be a strong leader. He didn't need love to build an empire. He was content in his solitude. Or so he told himself. But the moment he stepped into Ironclaw's great hall, something shifted. Kale's presence was overwhelming. Every wolf in the room instinctively bowed their heads in submission as he entered. He surveyed the hall with cold detachment, unimpressed by the displays of wealth and power around him. He had seen it all before. Conquered it all before. But then, as he turned toward the servants' entrance, a scent hit him like a lightning strike. The scent was intoxicating, unlike anything Kale had ever experienced. It was a blend of wildflowers, earth, and something ancient and untamed. His wolf, which had been dormant and indifferent for decades, surged to the surface with a ferocity that nearly knocked him off balance. Mate. The word roared through his mind with absolute certainty. She is here. Find her. Now. Kale's heart, which had been silent and unmoved for so long, pounded in his chest. His entire body thrummed with energy, with need, with an overwhelming compulsion to find the source of that scent. His eyes scanned the room frantically, searching, hunting, desperate. And then he saw her. Zara. She was carrying a tray across the hall, her head bowed, her movements cautious and practiced. She was trying to be invisible, but to Kale, she was the only thing in the room. She was breathtaking. Her dark skin glowed in the firelight, her hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and even in the plain, worn clothing of a servant, she radiated a quiet strength that took his breath away. Kale's wolf howled in triumph. That is her. That is our mate. Claim her. Protect her. She is ours. Kale's mind reeled. An Omega? A servant? In any other circumstance, the political ramifications would be catastrophic. His council would revolt. Other packs would see it as weakness. But in that moment, Kale didn't care about politics, tradition, or expectations. All he cared about was her. He started moving toward her, crossing the hall with purposeful strides, his eyes locked on Zara. Every wolf in his path instinctively moved aside, sensing the intensity radiating from their king. Zara felt the weight of someone's gaze and looked up. Her eyes met Kale's, and the world stopped. The moment their eyes locked, Zara felt it. The bond. It slammed into her with the force of a tidal wave, stealing her breath and rooting her to the spot. Her wolf, which had been subdued and silent for months, suddenly came alive, howling with joy and recognition. Mate. He is our mate. The bond is here. Zara's hands trembled. The tray she was holding slipped from her grip and crashed to the floor, shattering the silence in the hall. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Victor, the Ironclaw Alpha, rose from his seat, his face twisted in rage. He stormed toward Zara, his hand raised to strike. You clumsy, worthless piece of... He didn't finish the sentence because Kale moved. In one fluid motion, the Alpha King crossed the remaining distance and positioned himself between Victor and Zara. His voice, when he spoke, was low and lethal, filled with a quiet danger that made every wolf in the hall freeze. You will not touch her. Victor froze mid-step, shock and confusion warring on his face. My king, she is just a servant, an omega. She broke. She is my mate, Kale interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. And you will address her with the respect she deserves. The hall erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Murmurs of disbelief. An omega? As the Alpha King's mate? Impossible. Unheard of. Scandalous. Some wolves looked intrigued. Others looked horrified. But no one dared to speak openly against Kale. His authority was absolute. Kale turned to Zara, his expression softening in a way that no one in that hall had ever seen. The fearsome, untouchable Alpha King looked at this trembling Omega with such tenderness that it silenced even the harshest critics. He extended his hand. Come with me. Zara stared at his outstretched hand, her mind spinning. This had to be a dream. A hallucination brought on by exhaustion and starvation. There was no way the most powerful alpha in the world was claiming her as his mate. Not her. Not the girl who had been rejected and traded away like garbage. But the bond thrumming between them was undeniable. She could feel it in her bones, in her blood, in the very core of her being. This was real. He was real. And he was offering her a choice. Zara had spent her entire life being told what to do, where to go, who to be. But in this moment, Kale was giving her agency. He was asking, not commanding. With trembling fingers, Zara reached out and placed her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, a surge of energy passed between them, electric and overwhelming. The mate bond, which had already been forming, solidified with a force that made them both gasp. It was like every piece of Zara's shattered soul suddenly clicked into place. She felt whole for the first time in her life. Kale's grip tightened around her hand, protective and possessive. He pulled her close, his arm wrapping around her waist as if shielding her from the entire world. Prepare my carriage, he commanded, his voice ringing with authority. We leave immediately. Victor sputtered in protest. My king, surely this can wait. We have matters to discuss, treaties too. They can wait, Kale said coldly. My mate takes priority over everything. He looked around the hall, his silver eyes daring anyone to challenge him. And if any of you have a problem with my choice, you are welcome to voice it now. No one spoke. No one moved. Kale's dominance was absolute, and even the boldest alphas knew better than to challenge him. Within the hour, Zara found herself sitting in a luxurious carriage, wrapped in furs that were softer than anything she had ever touched. The contrast between the cold, brutal minds of Ironclaw and the warmth and comfort of Kale's carriage was so stark that Zara felt like she was dreaming. Kale sat across from her, watching her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. He hadn't said much since they left the hall, but his presence was overwhelming in the intimate space of the carriage. Zara kept her eyes down, unsure of what to say or do. She was acutely aware of the dirt under her nails, the worn state of her clothing, the fact that she probably smelled of sweat and labor. She felt utterly unworthy of this moment, of this man, of this impossible twist of fate. Finally, Cale broke the silence. His voice was gentler than she expected. "What is your name?" Zara looked up, startled. She had assumed he already knew. "Zara," she said quietly. "Zara Blackthorn." Cale repeated her name slowly, as if tasting it. "Zara. It suits you." There was a pause, and then he asked, "How long have you been at Ironclaw?" 6 months, Zara answered. "I was traded there by my former pack." Cale's jaw tightened. "Traded?" The word dripped with contempt. "Explain." Zara hesitated, but something in his eyes made her feel safe enough to tell the truth. "I was born in Shadowpine Pack. My father is the beta there. But I wasn't what they wanted. Because of how I look. They kept me hidden most of my life. When I turned 18 and no one wanted to mate with me, my father traded me to Ironclaw in exchange for weapons and resources." Cale's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles white with barely restrained rage. "They traded you because of your appearance?" Zara nodded, her throat tight. "Yes." Cale leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "Let me be very clear about something, Zara. You are the most beautiful creature I have ever laid eyes on. Your skin, your hair, everything about you is perfection. And anyone who made you feel otherwise is a fool who deserves to be destroyed." Zara's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever called her beautiful. She wanted to believe him, but years of rejection had built walls around her heart that wouldn't crumble so easily. "You don't have to say things like that," she whispered. "I know what I am. I know how the world sees me." Cale reached across the space between them and gently took her hand. "The bond is not a lie, Zara. I am not saying these things to make you feel better. I am saying them because they are true. You are my mate. The moon goddess herself chose you for me. Do you think she makes mistakes?" Zara's eyes filled with tears. She had asked herself that question so many times over the years. If the goddess created her, why did the world hate her? But hearing Cale say it, hearing the conviction in his voice, made something inside her crack open. "She is not wrong," Cale continued, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "And neither are you. You are exactly as you were meant to be. And I will spend every day of the rest of our lives proving that to you." Zara couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They spilled down her cheeks as she finally allowed herself to believe, if only for a moment, that maybe she was worth something after all. Cale moved to sit beside her, pulling her into his arms and holding her as she cried. He didn't tell her to stop. He didn't minimize her pain. He simply held her, strong and steady, while she released years of accumulated grief. When her tears finally subsided, Cale tilted her chin up so she was looking at him. "I need you to understand something," he said. "From this moment forward, you are under my protection. No one will ever hurt you again. No one will ever make you feel less than. And anyone who tries will answer to me. Do you understand?" Zara nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes." The journey to Crimson Moon territory took 3 days, and with each passing mile, Zara began to understand the magnitude of what had happened. Cale didn't just claim her as his mate. He protected her, honored her, and treated her with a reverence she had never experienced. He asked about her life, and when she spoke of the abuse she endured, his expression darkened with fury. He asked about her dreams, her fears, her favorite things. He wanted to know her, not just possess her. At night, they stopped at inns along the way. Cale insisted Zara have her own room, respecting her need for space and privacy despite the pull of the bond. He never pressured her, never made her feel like she owed him anything. Instead, he courted her, bringing her meals, talking with her for hours, making her laugh for the first time in years. Zara found herself falling for him, not just because of the bond, but because of who he was. Kale was strong, yes, but he was also kind. He was dominant, but he was also gentle. He was a king, but he treated her like a queen. On the third night, as they sat by a fire outside the inn, Kale asked her a question that made her heart skip. "Zara, do you want this? Do you want to be my mate, my Luna? Because if you don't, I will not force you. The bond is powerful, but I will not use it to trap you. You have a choice." Zara stared at him, stunned. No one had ever given her a choice before. Her entire life had been dictated by others. And now, this powerful man was offering her agency. She thought about it seriously. She thought about the life she had left behind, the pain, the rejection, the loneliness. And then she thought about Kale, about the way he looked at her, the way he made her feel seen and valued. She thought about the possibility of a future where she wasn't invisible, where she mattered. "I want this," she said softly. "I want you." Kale's eyes blazed with emotion, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Then you will have me," he promised. "For as long as you want me." When they finally arrived at Crimson Moon territory, Zara was stunned. The Packlands were vast and breathtaking, a sprawling fortress built into the side of a mountain and surrounded by dense forests that stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of wolves lived there, and as Kale's carriage approached, they lined the roads, bowing in respect. But they weren't just bowing to Kale. They were bowing to Zara as well. As they entered the main hall of the fortress, Zara's breath caught. It was magnificent. High ceilings, grand chandeliers, walls adorned with tapestries depicting the history of the Crimson Moon dynasty. And standing in the center of the hall was Kale's inner circle, his beta, gamma, and council members. They bowed as Kale entered, but their eyes were on Zara, filled with curiosity and in some cases barely concealed disdain. Kale's voice rang out, commanding and absolute. "This is Zara Blackthorn. She is my mate and your future Luna. You will treat her with the respect and honor she deserves." One of the council members, an older wolf with gray hair and a permanent scowl, stepped forward. "My king, with all due respect, surely this decision warrants discussion. She is an Omega. She has no training, no lineage, no, she is my mate," Kale interrupted, his tone cold and final. "That is the only qualification she needs. If you have a problem with that, Marcus, you are welcome to leave this pack." The room fell silent. Marcus's face flushed with anger, but he bowed his head and stepped back, knowing he had been put in his place. Kale turned to Zara, his expression softening. "Come. I'll show you to your chambers." As they walked through the halls, Zara could feel the eyes on her, hear the whispers. She knew this was going to be an uphill battle. But for the first time in her life, she had someone fighting beside her. And that made all the difference. Over the following weeks, Zara began to settle into her new life, though it was far from easy. Kale's council was divided. Some members welcomed her, intrigued by their king's choice and willing to give her a chance. Others openly opposed her, whispering that she was unworthy, unsuitable, a stain on the dynasty's legacy. The most vocal opponent was Marcus, the elder council member who had challenged Kale on her first day. He made no secret of his disdain, constantly undermining her in subtle ways, questioning her presence at meetings, and making snide comments about her background. But Kale never wavered. He stood by her side, publicly and privately, making it clear that anyone who disrespected Zara was disrespecting him. He assigned her a personal guard, a fierce she-wolf named Lyra who had been one of Kale's most trusted warriors. Lyra became Zara's protector and eventually her friend. He also arranged for Zara to receive training. If she was going to be Luna, she needed to know how to fight, how to lead, and how to command respect. Kale personally trained her in combat, teaching her techniques that had been passed down through generations of Crimson Moon alphas. At first, Zara struggled. She was weak from months of hard labor and malnutrition. But with proper food, rest and training, her body began to transform. She grew stronger, faster, more confident. Her wolf, which had been suppressed for so long, finally had the chance to thrive. And she was magnificent. In her wolf form, Zara was breathtaking. Her midnight black fur shimmered with silver streaks, and she moved with a grace and power that left even seasoned warriors in awe. The pack members who had mocked her began to whisper in tones of respect instead of disdain. Even Marcus, though he would never admit it, watched her with grudging acknowledgement. But physical training was only part of Zara's transformation. Kale also taught her about leadership, about politics, about the delicate balance of ruling a pack as large and powerful as Crimson Moon. He brought her to council meetings, encouraged her to speak, and listened to her ideas with genuine interest. Zara discovered that she had a mind for strategy, a natural ability to read people and situations. She started offering suggestions that impressed even the most skeptical council members. One day, during a particularly contentious meeting about resource allocation, Zara proposed a solution that no one had considered. Instead of dividing resources equally among all territories, she suggested prioritizing the areas with the greatest need while incentivizing the stronger territories to support the weaker ones. It was a bold idea, and it sparked heated debate. But by the end of the meeting, the council voted to implement her plan. As they filed out of the room, Marcus approached her. He didn't smile, but there was a flicker of respect in his eyes. "That was a sound proposal," he said stiffly. Zara nodded, refusing to show how much the acknowledgement meant. "Thank you, Marcus." It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Slowly, Zara was winning over the doubters, not through her bloodline or her beauty, but through her intelligence, her strength, and her unwavering determination. Meanwhile, her relationship with Kale deepened. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day, but what truly connected them was the genuine love and respect they had for each other. Kale never treated Zara as a possession or a trophy. He treated her as an equal, a partner, someone whose opinions and feelings mattered. And Zara, in turn, learned to trust him, to open her heart to the possibility of being loved without condition. One evening, as they walked through the gardens of the fortress, Kale asked her a question that had been on his mind. "Do you ever think about your family? About Shadowpine?" Zara was quiet for a moment, considering. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I think about my mother. I wonder if she's okay. If she ever thinks about me. And Maris, the woman who raised me when no one else would. I hope she's still alive. I'd like to see her again someday." Kale stopped walking and turned to face her. "Would you like me to send for her? To bring her here?" Zara's eyes widened. "You would do that?" "Of course," Kale said. "If she's important to you, then she's important to me." Tears filled Zara's eyes. "I would like that very much." Within a week, Kale's men had located Maris and brought her to Crimson Moon territory. When Zara saw her, she ran into the old woman's arms, sobbing with joy. Maris held her tight, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Look at you, child," Maris whispered. "I told you that you were destined for greatness. I told you." Zara introduced Maris to Kale, and the old woman studied him with sharp, assessing eyes. Then she nodded, satisfied. "You chose well," she said to Kale. "And you," she said to Zara, "finally found someone worthy of you." Maris stayed at Crimson Moon, becoming an honored elder and a trusted advisor to Zara. Her presence gave Zara strength and reminded her of where she came from and how far she had come. Months passed, and Zara continued to grow into her role as Luna. She implemented programs to support the weaker members of the pack, established training initiatives for young wolves, and even mediated disputes with neighboring territories. Her reputation spread beyond Crimson Moon. Other packs began to hear about the dark-skinned Luna, who had won the heart of the Alpha King and earned the respect of one of the most powerful packs in the realm. Some admired her. Others resented her. But no one could deny her impact. The final test of Zara's acceptance came during the lunar ceremony, a sacred event held once a year to honor the moon goddess and reaffirm the pack's unity. It was the most important event in the Crimson Moon calendar, and Zara would be formally presented as Luna for the first time. The entire pack would gather to witness it, and Zara knew that this was her moment to prove, once and for all, that she belonged. The night of the ceremony, Zara stood in her chambers, staring at herself in the mirror. She was dressed in ceremonial robes, deep crimson trimmed with silver, her hair adorned with moonstones. She looked every bit the Luna, but inside, she was terrified. What if they rejected her? What if, even after everything she had done, they still saw her as unworthy? Kale entered the room and saw the fear in her eyes. He walked up behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "You are ready," he said softly. "You have earned this." Zara turned to face him. "What if they don't accept me?" "Then they are fools," Kale said simply. "But I don't think they will reject you. You have proven yourself 100 times over. Trust yourself, Zara." "I do." His words steadied her. Zara took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and nodded. "Let's do this." The ceremony was held in the great courtyard, a massive open space surrounded by torches and filled with thousands of wolves. The air buzzed with anticipation. Kale led Zara to the center of the courtyard, where an altar had been set up beneath the full moon. The pack fell silent as Kale raised his hand. "Tonight," he began, his voice carrying across the courtyard, "we gather to honor the moon goddess and to affirm our unity as a pack. But tonight is also special because I present to you, officially and formally, your Luna, Zara Blackthorn." Zara stepped forward, her heart pounding. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, judging, assessing. She lifted her chin and met their gazes, refusing to shrink or apologize for who she was. Kale continued. This woman was rejected by those too blind to see her worth. She was traded away like she was nothing. She was abused, broken, and left to die. But she survived. She rose. And she has proven time and time again that she is worthy to stand beside me. She is intelligent, strong, compassionate, and fierce. She is everything a Luna should be. And I am honored to call her my mate. The crowd was silent, and for a moment, Zara feared the worst. But then, one wolf began to howl. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the entire pack had joined in, their voices rising in a chorus of acceptance and celebration. Zara's eyes filled with tears as the sound washed over her. They were accepting her. Not because of her bloodline. Not because of her appearance. But because of who she was and what she had accomplished. Kale took her hand and raised it high. "Behold your Luna," he declared. The pack howled louder, and Zara felt, for the first time in her life, like she truly belonged. Years passed, and Zara's legacy only grew. She became known not just as the Luna of Crimson Moon, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. Wolves from all over the realm who had been rejected, ostracized, or told they were less than looked to her as proof that their worth was not determined by others' opinions. Zara used her platform to advocate for change, challenging the prejudices that had plagued werewolf society for generations. She established sanctuaries for rejected wolves, created laws protecting omegas from abuse, and worked tirelessly to dismantle the hierarchies that had caused so much pain. She and Kale ruled side by side, not as king and subject, but as equal partners. And when Zara became pregnant, the entire pack celebrated. The day her daughter was born, Zara held the tiny baby in her arms and wept. Her daughter had the same rich, dark skin, the same beautiful features. And Zara knew, without a doubt, that this child would never experience the rejection and pain that she had endured. She looked up at Cale, who was gazing at their daughter with wonder and love. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Just like her mother." Zara smiled through her tears. "She will never be made to feel like she doesn't belong," Zara said fiercely. "She will grow up knowing she is loved, valued, and worthy. Exactly as she is." And she did. Zara's daughter, named Selene after the moon goddess, grew up surrounded by love and acceptance. She was celebrated, not in spite of her appearance, but because of it. And when she came of age, she became one of the most respected and powerful she-wolves in the realm, continuing her mother's legacy of breaking barriers and redefining what it meant to be worthy. So what can we learn from Zara's story? First, rejection is not a reflection of your worth. Zara was rejected her entire life, but that rejection said everything about the people doing the rejecting and nothing about her value. Second, your darkest moments can be the doorway to your greatest destiny. Being traded to Ironclaw was the worst thing that ever happened to Zara, but it put her on the path to meeting Cale and becoming Luna. Third, true love sees you, honors you, and never asks you to shrink. Cale loved Zara exactly as she was and empowered her to become even greater. Fourth, you have the power to rewrite the narrative. Zara could have stayed broken and bitter, but she chose to rise, to heal, and to use her pain to create change. And finally, your worth is inherent. It is not given to you by others, and it cannot be taken away. Zara was always valuable, always powerful, always destined for greatness. The only thing that changed was that she finally encountered people who recognized it. And if Zara's story touched your heart, if it reminded you that your worth is not determined by those too blind to see it, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of forbidden love, dark fantasy, powerful heroines, and tales that remind you that you are worthy of love, respect, and a destiny greater than you can imagine. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that rejection is often redirection, and that the people who cast you aside are simply clearing the path for those destined to choose you. Zara was traded away because she was different. But she became a queen because she was destined. And so are you.